Good afternoon. Our program will begin in just a moment. Good afternoon. Our program will begin in just a moment. Good afternoon, and welcome to today's program hosted by American Jewish Committee and Hillel International. Over the last 2 weeks, we have seen unspeakable atrocities in Israel. Hamas launched a brutal war, killing thousands, injuring many more, and taking over 200 as hostage in Gaza. In the diaspora, we've seen a dramatic spike in anti-Semitism, a phenomenon being acutely felt on university campuses. Joining us today to discuss the current climate on campus are AJC Campus Global Board President Abe Baker-Butler, Hillel International Israel Leadership Network Executive Committee Member Jeremy Davis, AJC Campus Global Board Vice President of Global Outreach Kayla Diamond, and Hillel International Israel Leadership Network Executive Committee Member Talia Siegel. Moderating our conversation is President and CEO of Hillel International, Adam Lehman. After we hear from our guests, time permitting, we will take your questions. You may email your question to questions@ajc.org, questions is plural, or you can use the Q&A feature in Zoom. First, let me introduce AJC Director of Campus Affairs, Jeff Greenberg, for a special welcome. Jeff, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Claire. Hello, everyone. It is a great privilege to be with you all this afternoon or evening, wherever you find yourself in the world. I'm just going to give a quick remarks and then kick it over to this outstanding panel that AJC and Hillel International have put together for you today. It's during these times, I just want to say that it's so inspirational for me as a professional and as a proud member of the Jewish community to have voices like Abe's and Kayla's and Talia's and Jeremy's represented on today's call. Their perspective is incredibly valuable, and I hope that you all take a lot away from today's meeting. I am currently at the University of Pennsylvania, where I'm meeting with students, supporting them on their efforts here on the ground, as well as students at Drexel and Temple University. You know, many of you have seen all the reports coming out from college campuses around the world, and I want you to know that AJC was here before October 7th to support students, and we will be here for years to come as we continue to offer resources, both in terms of materials and in terms of face-to-face conversations with our student leaders. We will continue in this important work, and I want to thank each and every one of you for your support as we continue doing this really this really important work with supporting our students. So thank you. And with that, I'd like to kick it over to Adam for today's conversation. And Adam, please take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jeff and Claire. And I also want to give a shout out and thanks to my friend and partner, Ted Deutsch, and really everyone at AJC for your partnership with us at Hillel International. As Jeff mentioned, I'm Adam Lehman. I'm the president and CEO of Hillel International, serving 850 campuses around the world, Jewish students everywhere. And these are incredibly trying times coming out of the unthinkable and heinous terrorist attacks of just not even 2 weeks ago. We have seen harassment of Jewish students on campus, leading to physical assault in the most extreme cases. We have seen students marginalized and silenced in classrooms, with faculty members and instructors speaking out in completely unacceptable and even threatening terms. We have seen students who are being subjected to harassment and abuse in dorms, in social media channels that are not only broadcast channels, but are often specific to their universities. And very sadly, we have seen far too many university administrators not speak up, show up, and stand up for their Jewish students in this moment. So that's what, for the many people joining us on this Zoom, they're hearing about. But we want to hear directly from the four amazing Jewish student leaders that we've got, their own experiences, what they are seeing, and what they are hearing. So with that, starting with Talia, I'd love to hear from each of you just what your overall experience has been during this past 2 weeks, and what you're taking away from that so far.
Yeah, thank you so much, Adam, and thank you to everyone who's here. I think over the past 2 weeks or so, I've been continuously reminding myself that college is really just a hotbed of intense opinions with people trying to navigate forming their own. And so plenty of people are neutral, but the loudest voices are the extremes on both sides. Social media is filled with divisive posts that are really it feels unavoidable to see. As far as my experience at Georgia Tech's campus, the most intense thing that we've had to deal with was our AE house, which is the Jewish fraternity house being vandalized. Someone came at 3:50 a.m. on Sunday and wrote in shaving cream, "Free Palestine." Thankfully, it was taken very seriously and dealt with within 24 hours. I believe the person who did it was arrested, and the two who were with them are in touch with the Dean of Students. On the other side, we've also seen a vigil for Palestine, which I believe was kept respectful, as we really should be mourning victims on both sides. And then our Muslim Student Association held a bake sale that was also handing out egregiously misinformed flyers. As a message of hope, kind of on the more positive side, I've seen our Hillel, our Chabad, and API all come together. We had a gathering with an Israeli diplomat from the consulate that was also attended by the university president and several other admin, as well as an estimated 300 Jewish and non-Jewish students who came out even in the rain. And so the support and community has really been overwhelming, and I'm incredibly proud of the way that we've come together.
Yeah, thank you, Talia. And we have seen that at campuses across North America and around the world, with more than 50,000 students by our count coming out for meaningful vigils and solidarity events and across, as you said, Jewish organizations. But we have also seen acts of vandalism directed at Jewish fraternities and sororities, at Hillel's, and even directly at some individual Jewish students. So thanks for sharing. We're a global organization with a global footprint, as is AJC. So we're really pleased to have Kayla with us today, coming from South Africa. Kayla, if you can tell us about your experience.
Sure. Thank you so much, Adam. So to give a bit of context in the South African context before we begin, our leading government party, the African National Congress, has pledged its alliance to Palestine under the leadership of our President Cyril Ramaphosa. And, this is being amplified even by South Africa receiving a letter of thanks from Hamas. I think, living in a country where your government isn't supportive of you, and in fact is supportive of the enemies and of the genocide of your people, has been really, really trying. I think what's also been quite complex to navigate is, for the past few years, there's been incredible student leaders, Jewish student leaders on campuses throughout the country that have really worked hard to kind of take away that narrative that Israel is an apartheid state. And obviously, South Africa being the epicenter of apartheid, it's a very difficult question to navigate when people ask, is Israel an apartheid state? So when the ANC has now come forward and said that Israel is indeed an apartheid state, and the ANC is the opposition to apartheid, it's been really difficult to navigate that with students on campus. Throughout Johannesburg, Cape Town, and Pretoria, the PSC, the Palestinian Solidarity Committee, has hosted protests. They have brought Hezbollah flags on campus, they've brought Hamas flags on campus, they've harassed many students. A lot of lecturers on campus have been unfair with what they've said. So I think, as Talia was saying, it's a really difficult time to be a student on campus.
Thank you, Kayla. I mean, it's really horrendous to hear the conditions you have to be a student in. And I will say, even as we hear about a government that is trading in propaganda and misinformation, and just how punishing that is to a Jewish student in that environment, I am grateful to President Biden, to at least so many in the leadership of the United States government, for at least standing with Israel, standing up for the Jewish community in this moment. So we are grateful for that. Abe, if we can hear from you and your experience at Yale.
Yeah, thank you, Adam, and thank you to AJC and Hillel for bringing us together. This has been a really challenging 2 weeks for Jewish students, and I think, based on my own experience and what I've heard from so many of my peers at AJC and elsewhere, a big part of what has made this so hard is that as we were grieving the worst tragedy to befall the Jewish people since the Holocaust, many students on our campuses were staging celebrations of the success of the Palestinian resistance. And I think everyone on this call can imagine what that feels like. I think many Jewish students were shocked to see people who they considered to be their friends doing this kind of thing, and it broke a lot of trust on campus. On my campus in particular, the administration has been very strong in supporting Jewish students, which is great. However, we have seen incidents like graffiti and also some pro-Hamas chants being done on campus by Palestinian solidarity groups. So that has all been very challenging, and the same thing is playing out on campuses across the country. And a lot of Jewish students are feeling isolated. Many are feeling unsafe, and there are big questions about what comes next. As Talia said, I think it really has been amazing to witness the solidarity. I've seen our Jewish community at Yale and elsewhere and across the country of students come together in ways I never thought possible across denominational and other lines. So that is, of course, a bright spot, but there's a lot of challenges ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Abe. I mean, it is important for us as a community to recognize and celebrate the bright spots, but also to understand what you just pointed out in terms of the world upside down, where literally in our communal Shiva, over so many innocent lives lost in Israel, that you have groups who take it upon themselves to celebrate that unthinkable terrorism. I mean, again, it's also different, I think, as we have so many people on the Zoom who are not on campus. This is not something happening that you're seeing on your news channel. This is happening, literally down the hall or on the quad. So thank you for sharing what is real, and it's so concerning. We'll bring it home, at least for this question, with Jeremy from Ohio State, the Ohio State University.
Thanks, Adam. Really great question. I just, want to echo what Talia, Abe, and Caleb have been saying. We are at least at Ohio State, are seeing a few detractors. We've seen some, intifada from the river to the sea chants on the Oval. But I'll quote Churchill and say, where there's free speech, there's bound to be foolish speech. And they're all, on the SJP side, they're also very concerned for some reason with the State House. They've been protesting there, which I kind of find very ironic, because this past week we had a community vigil with over 600 people. The governor showed up. We had state senators show up, congressional representatives, the mayor, Columbus City Council. So in contrast to South Africa, I don't think I've ever seen the United States government more united in the past 8 years than on this particular issue, which I think is absolutely amazing. And I kind of want to shift the conversation to a more positive lens, in the sense that, we had a rally on campus, over 500 students showed up. I've never seen the Ohio State Jewish community more united. We've been actually working with university administration. I sent a letter to the university president, and they did release sort of a pseudo statement where you kind of have to go several layers deep online to find the condemnation of Hamas in support of Israel. But I think what's, equally, if not more important, is that the university is very, very receptive to providing security to our Jewish institutions, Hillel, Chabad, providing support, mental health resources, academic resources to Jewish students. So, there might be a few detractors, but in very much sense, where I'm very proud of the work that we continue to do on campus. It's really positive, and I'm, optimistic in spite of the difficult times.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. And as a native Ohioan and someone whose father actually served in that state house, 50 years ago, I'm at least proud that both government officials and university officials at Ohio State are trying to do what's right. And speaking of doing what's right, you four are all not just experiencing this as Jewish students on campus. You are leaders specifically with AJC, with Hillel. And so I think, all of us participating just want to hear from you about your role as leaders and how that's hopefully enabling and empowering yourselves and others around you. So we're going to start with Abe and Kayla. And if you can just talk about your involvement with the AJC Campus Global Board and how through that leadership, you're trying to take action right now. Abe, if you want to start us off.
Sure. So I've been involved with AJC for many years since I did its Leaders for Tomorrow program in high school. That was an essential program for me that has really shaped and empowered me to respond in the ways I'm responding today to the extremely tense challenges we're facing on campus. And today I serve as president of AJC's Campus Global Board. It's a group of 30 Jewish student leaders from around the world. Kayla is our vice president of global outreach. And we had already been doing a lot of meaningful work, but the group has really become essential as we responded to the attacks of October 7th. Not only have we served as a group that stands in solidarity with each other, but our chat and our Google folder have become our key infrastructure for developing resources for students, mental health resources, resources for filing bias complaints, for dealing with administrators, talking points, conversation templates for talking to peers, exchanging best practices for engaging with the media. The Campus Global Board has been essential for responding to this crisis. And in my, on my personal campus in particular, the CGB has helped me and empowered me to do things like speak at our vigil at Yale, which attracted 500 people. And so the work of AJC and also of Hillel, I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about my Hillel affiliation as well. I'm deeply involved with Yale's Hillel. And yeah, without the leadership infrastructure that we have, our work on campus during these tough days would not be possible.
Yeah, thank you, Abe, for sharing that. And Kayla, again, from the global perspective, it would be great to hear about your role within the AJC Campus Global Board and what you're doing from that platform.
Yes, so Abe really said it perfectly. My involvement, I sat on the Campus Global Board last year, and then this year we actually introduced a new position, which is Vice President of Global Outreach, just to make sure that our global students are really heard. Obviously, it's the American Jewish Committee, but the American Jewish Committee is one of the most incredible advocacy organizations, and it has so much to give in terms of resources, in terms of experts. So it's really been such a privilege to be able to utilize those resources. But I think for me, what's really stood out, which also what Abe said, is our group has really just come together. And I think, coming from a small community in South Africa, I hope I'm not forgetting anyone, but there's been communities in Canada and in Australia, in Israel, where we've all experienced very unique experiences, but unfortunately, it's been the same. And I think we've really used our group as a pillar to lean on, and we've really found comfort in having each other and having those similar experiences and learning from each other what we've all done to approach these kinds of actions.
Yeah, very powerful. Thank you, Kayla, for sharing that. I now want to turn to Jeremy and Talia to hear the same from you as relates to the Israel Leadership Network at Hillel International, which we created just 2 years ago to empower amazing student leaders. Jeremy, if we can start with you in terms of what that experience has been like and how you're using the ILN, the Israel Leadership Network platform right now.
Sure, absolutely. So I've been a part of the Israel Leadership Network with Hillel International since its inception last year. I know Josh Lasner's watching this, and he's done an absolutely remarkable job. Essentially what ILN is, and it functions very similar to the AJC Campus Global Board, where you have roughly 100 to 150 pro-Israel student leaders from across the country who meet with influential leaders in the pro-Israel space. Recently we met with Dennis Ross, who's one of these geopolitical experts who's been in the Bush, Obama administrations, who really has a real understanding of what's going on right now. but just the support that I received, not just information, resources, opportunities, but also I think the most important resources I've received is the people. Just having someone to rely on, especially during these difficult times, has probably been the most important thing that I've received from the Israel Leadership Network, aside from, opportunities to go to Israel, opportunities to speak at various functions. But, we have a group chat where, if someone sees something that's happening on campus, I have an immediate connection to someone else across the country who maybe has dealt with that same problem. And now I have that resource to go ask them to get support. But my role in Israel Leadership Network has been absolutely phenomenal. So
it's great to hear. And the power of that network of student leaders who are specifically leading in support of Israel cannot be underestimated. Talia, if you can share your own experience, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, to echo Kayla, Abe, and Jeremy, I really cannot emphasize enough how valuable the network has been. As student leaders, we're not only figuring out how to process what happened on October 7th and is continuing to happen on our own, but we're also having to step up as leaders and bring our communities together and everything. And it's frankly exhausting. But having those other people who truly understand what we're experiencing is really healing in a way. To echo some of what Jeremy said, we have like a digital content circle group chat. Just yesterday, when I was seeing the flyer that our Muslim Student Association was handing out with misinformation, I sent it in the chat, and people were immediately there to help me make our own flyer that would have our information. So just, invaluable networks. Yeah, no, it's great to hear. And the other digital piece to make everyone aware of who's participating today is another couple hundred participants now in a content creation offshoot of the Israel Leadership Network that's been creating content for social media specifically. And this group of students, again, working with one another, have created more than 1,000 pieces of content and garnered more than 1 million views from others, getting that story out there. And I actually do want to take a moment on this issue of social media, either what you may be seeing in Instagram, on TikTok, or Yik Yak or other platforms that are specific to your campus. If anyone wants to weigh in with what you've been seeing in social media and what effect you feel that is having on Jewish students.
I can weigh in. So I'm initially not like the biggest social media guy. I'll just put that out there. But I know a lot of my friends are, and they've been seeing a lot of misinformation just recently with the supposed hospital that blew up and killed 500 people. It was not an Israeli airstrike. It was, a bad rocket from the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, but we're still seeing a lot of misinformation about that. We're just seeing a lot of, just like from the river to the sea, simple comments that's just repeated over and over. It's kind of an overused slogan, I think. And it doesn't really have any tangible value. But what I've been telling people, you can be on social media, but, really limit yourself at the very least. And, I think it's really, really ineffective to try and engage people over social media, to try and convince them that, Israel is suffering a lot, and we have justification to kind of defend ourselves. I think that's a complete waste. I think what people should be doing right now is having in-person conversations, A, within the Jewish community, B, within the broader community, and then C, with key stakeholders, with the university, with local community leaders, because those are the people that make decisions that impact our community. So those are the conversations that need to be had, as opposed to just endlessly scrolling on social media.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. I mean, I think that's just terrific advice. And again, for those who are students listening in, or parents and grandparents, passing that advice on to the students in your lives is really important, because again, if people are so-called doom scrolling, that's poisonous in terms of how it's impacting people's spirit, and also even their own understanding, because as Jeremy pointed out, there's so much misinformation out there. We're actually at Hillel in the process of creating an entirely new social channel just to get out to students more accurate information about what is happening in this war. I want to talk a little bit about university administrations. You all attend institutions where there are university leaders responsible for the campus climate where you're attending school. And fortunately, in some cases, we've seen university leaders speak up in meaningful ways to recognize, first off, the abhorrent terrorism that started this whole period of 12 days to condemn Hamas as the terrorist organization it is, but also importantly, just to speak to their Jewish students. And I want to be really clear for this audience. We do not, as a Jewish community, and certainly not at Hillel, take the position that universities can't speak to other parts of their community. They need to. It's a diverse community. But for us, at least, the failure to speak to their Jewish students at a point and in a time where there's been this trauma just feels like a failure of leadership. My question to all of you is around what you would like to see. What would you like to see from your university president or chancellor, or from staff working across the university? Maybe Abe, if you want to kick us off, but everyone can chime in. I think this is an important question for us to hear from all of you on.
Yeah, I'd like to see some moral clarity, Adam. My president at Yale, President Salve, as I said, he made a very good statement, but he is very much the outlier. Staff at my university, presidents and staff at other universities, faculty across the university landscape have made mealy-mouthed statements that try to equivocate and put ideology before facts. That's not only in the university space. It's not only the faculty, it's not only students, it's even beyond the university. I've been really worried and honestly somewhat appalled by the inability of so many institutions and powerful individuals in this country on and off campus to declare the attacks, the atrocious terrorist attacks, which we saw from Hamas, as crimes against humanity, or at least something very similar to that. And I find it very worrying that, especially in academic circles, we can't find moral clarity and we can't acknowledge when crimes against humanity are committed. So, as I said, while I'm happy with the statement and the support from my president in particular, he's very much the outlier, and it really worries me the lack of moral clarity we're seeing.
Thank you, Abe. Talia, what about you? What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I have some mixed opinions a little bit, but first and foremost, I do not think it is difficult to unequivocally condemn terrorism while recognizing the way that both Jewish and Palestinian people are affected by it. I have been grateful for the support that we've gotten from our administration. Our president, like I said, attended and spoke at the gathering that we held for Jewish students. And he did release eventually an email to all students, as well as like a blog post of sorts. I think that he sees his role as one of bringing people together, which I do think is still important in this time. The more divisive things get, the worse it is overall for all of us. And so I think that as campus leaders, it is important to continue to spread messages of bringing community together, while, unequivocally condemning terrorism and recognizing how people are affected.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Thank you, Talia. Caleb, we can hear from you about your perspective on this. That'd be great.
Sure. So in South Africa, if I'm speaking about the main university in Cape Town, as well as Pretoria, the administration has been really, really appalling. I have a friend that goes to the University of Cape Town, and she has on multiple occasions felt harassed and has really tried her best to get hold of the administration, but it is to no avail, regardless of the help from boards in South Africa. In terms of Pretoria, again, they had a protest, the PSC had a protest, and it was supposed to be cancelled, but it still went on. And they also did this on purpose on a Shabbat, so that Jewish students weren't able to stop it on the day. But then, we get this shift when it comes to the main campus in Johannesburg. And I think the main thing is that our Jewish leaders in the country, both on boards, both students, have really worked so hard over the years to build a relationship with the administrative department. And it really has come in their favor. I mean, they have been actually amazing during this kind of a situation. You know, the South African Union of Jewish Students held a vigil and the campus provided security for it. And they've really been understanding of our side as well, which I think is amazing. And it really does just go to show that, you know, through over the years, building that relationship with them, it actually does pay off.
Yeah, and that last point is huge, and obviously something that AJC has focused greatly on, and we at Hillel are focusing on at this point as well, in terms of relationship building with administrations. Jeremy, if you can tell us about the situation at Ohio State.
Sure. So I mentioned previously that, you know, the university has been way more receptive to providing security, physical security at our Jewish institutions, which is an absolute W, regardless. But, you know, in contrast to that, you know, we asked for a very clear, very public, very visible statement, and they essentially kind of hid their statement condemning Hamas, supporting Israel, but you really have to click and dig deep to find it. So we're still trying to work with university administration to release a very clear statement. But, you know, I'll echo what Abe is saying. I think a lot of people in university administrations are trying to put ideology over truth. And, you know, to quote Rishi Sunak, you know, there are not two sides to this. It's very clear that Hamas, they're not militants, they're not freedom fighters, they are terrorists. And to not really understand that is really appalling. And even still, you know, these universities receive federal funding, and the fact that the US government is overwhelmingly supporting Israel, you know, and the universities can't make the same, you know, moral judgment is disgraceful, I think. But, you know, I'm not sure if it's just a moral cowardice, if they just don't want to get involved, but, you know, I'll quote Hamilton and say, those who believe in nothing will fall for everything. So I'd really like to see some more, you know, moral courage. I don't think this situation is morally trivial as far as, you know, who's in the wrong and who's in the right. So we're working on it.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jeremy, for the clarity of your comments. And I also want to lift up the issue of security. I mean, even as we look to university leaders to speak up and speak out with more clarity, we also need them to ensure that they are investing in ways that actually support the physical safety, security, and well-being of Jewish students and Jewish student institutions on campus, which sadly, at this point, that is not a threat that we can ignore. I want to turn now to the many people listening into this webinar. We've got volunteer leaders at AJC. We have volunteer leaders at Hillel. We have other concerned community members. I'd love for each of you to share what you would like to see from Hillel, from AJC, from other Jewish community institutions. What can people do to be helpful to Jewish students in this moment? And we'll just reverse the order. And Jeremy, you can lead off.
Sure. So, I mean, first of all, just, you know, very grateful for the opportunities that Hillel has provided in all my years of college. And, you know, this time has clearly been the most difficult, I think. But what I'd really like to see from Hillel and AJC is, you know, just providing the opportunity and the safe to A, support Israel, and B, be a proud Jew. Now is the time to really, you know, if there's any other time to be Jewish, to be proud, to be pro-Israel, now is the time. So providing, you know, resources like today, we just have, you know, a breakfast support group. We had, you know, mental health dogs come in. So providing those opportunities. And then I think also the AJC and Hillel can provide, you know, contacts to A, university administration, and then B, to the broader community, whether that be government contacts or, you know, business contacts, whatever it might be, wherever we can gather support, I think is really, really important. And, you know, I realized this, it's, you know, in regards to the social media question before, you can't really convince everyone, but you have to convince and be an ally and find loyalty and allyship with the right people. And I think that's what Hillel and AJC can provide, are those, you know, avenues to kind of make those connections.
That's great guidance, Jeremy. Kayla, if you can share your thought on this, please.
I think over the past 2 weeks, what's become incredibly apparent to me is the power of knowledge and the power of education. And I think I can speak for many South African Jews when I say that there's a lot of people that are very happy to tell you that they are Zionist and that they support Israel, but when you ask them why, they don't have a concrete answer. And I think that especially in these times, it's so easy to share social media posts or to wear an Israeli flag. But now when we're coming on these university campuses and people are asking questions, I think we need to be able to have access to quick and easily understandable knowledge and how to answer these difficult questions.
Yeah, Kayla, it's such an important priority that both organizations and others are trying to address right now. I mentioned before this entirely new social channel to provide those resources. We just shared out to all of our Hillels a student-facing toolkit, which includes some of that information. And I think as a community, and you're really speaking to this, we have to continue to invest in education around Jewish identity, around Israel. Jeremy and I were able to be together just a few months ago in Israel, meeting with leaders of various parts of Israeli society. But even if those experiences are not available in this moment, we do need to, and we will want to continue to invest in that core educational priority. Talia, please.
Yeah, to echo that a bit, I mean, I am incredibly lucky to have been on the trips that I've been in Israel, anywhere from Birthright onward, the Israel Insights Fellowship with Hillel International, Hasbara, and the AJC Global Forum brought us to Tel Aviv as well last summer. And so all of these experiences, I mean, I visited communities along the Gaza border. It's like my lock screen on my phone is one of the communities who is really deeply affected. And so having that connection is incredibly important going forward. And I hope that, in the future, we can continue to provide students with the opportunities for that. So I think it's important to promote safe spaces on campus. I know Georgia Tech has been fighting to have a Hillel building on campus for a while now, and unfortunately it's a bit complicated for finding the property and everything, but I think it's particularly important now. And finally, elevating student voices as we're doing here. We as student leaders are the people who know our communities best. And so elevating our voices, I think, is particularly important and appreciated.
Yeah, thank you, Talia. And you're hitting on the fact that we can't, during a crisis like this, necessarily build every solution. We need the community investing ahead of these crises. So having had the creation of the campus board and having had the creation of the Israel Leadership Network, investing in Hillels, investing in Israel experiences, engagement, and education, those all need to be happening at even greater scale. So God willing, as we get to the other side of this crisis, war, and set of tragedies, that we are even better prepared for what comes next. Abe, if you can give us your take on this as well, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kayla, Talia, and Jeremy really covered a lot of the key points here, but I would just reemphasize that AJC and Hillel now is, these organizations are our organization's most important moment. Supporting AJC and Hillel now is more important than ever, both because student leaders like us need to be empowered, something that AJC and Hillel have done a great job of doing, but also because, as Jeremy said, Jewish students are scared right now. They feel threatened and confused right now, and they need a safe space where they can be proudly Jewish and where they can connect with other Jews. And both AJC and Hillel are really, I'd say, they're uniquely positioned to provide that to them. And then the other point I would make is, we were talking about how atrocious things are on social media. And while I am really disgusted by a lot of the hate speech and concerned about the misinformation on social media, what frustrates me perhaps the most is that everyone is talking past each other. There is no productive dialogue happening. We're getting no closer to bridges being built or solutions being found. And I know, at least particularly of AJC has made it a core part of its mission to build interfaith and intercommunal understanding, and to put together and expand opportunities for dialogue. So I think that is going to be also extremely important as we move ahead from this crisis.
Yeah, thank you, Abe. And that emphasis on dialogue across difference and bridge building will be critical. I know it may be difficult for many in this moment on all sides of the issues, but longer term, for sure, we've got to continue to invest in that direction. Talia, I think you had something you wanted to add as well.
I realized that some of the suggestions I made were a bit more long-term. And I know that one of the hardest parts of all of this is the feeling of helplessness. And so I think for now, it's important to recognize the way that we outside of Israel feel like our lives are just moving on and going on as normal. I think that's been one of the hardest parts for me, is that my world feels like it's upside down and my heart is thousands of miles away, and life here looks like it's normal. And so just being there for each other and having that understanding that we're all going through this and that we're really understood, reaching out to our friends, reaching out to our family, and making sure that we all feel supported together, I think is crucial in this time.
Thank you, Talia. And I suspect literally every person participating in this webinar has a relationship with Jewish students on campus, and simply reaching out, picking up the phone, or otherwise connecting is a meaningful way to check in, build a relationship, show support, because as you said, it can feel really lonely and isolating otherwise. I want to open it up now to questions from participants and invite back in Claire, who I think is going to raise questions at this stage.
Thanks, Adam. Our first question is for you, Jeremy, and it's from Karen Malkus in Bethesda, who's asking, as parents, what's the best way to support our children who are experiencing anti-Semitism and anti-Israel sentiment on our campuses?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Thank you for that. So I'd say, the first thing, I'm not a parent, but the first thing always is to support your children. Call them, if you need to fly out, be with them in person, take them to lunch, take them to dinner, really make sure that they are supported. So that's number one. Number two, contact university administration. They have a responsibility. You're paying, I don't know how much in tuition, it's exorbitant, but they have a responsibility to keep your child safe and do something about what's going on. So I mean, those two are the most pragmatic things I can talk about. Write to university administration, call them up. If you're visiting your child, go in person. Don't capitulate. Don't take no for an answer. So.
And if I can add very briefly to that, I think you should do those things that Jeremy recommends, even if you do not have a child who is a student on campus. I know personally, I've heard from lots of people in my community, not only in my family, but friends, asking how I'm doing on campus, and that means a huge amount. And even if you don't have a child on campus, you should reach out to your alma mater and ask, what are you doing to make Jewish students feel safe and to fight anti-Semitism?
Abe, we'll stay with you for the next question. We're getting this question many times on Zoom. What do we do if our campuses have been radio silent? We've not heard anything at all from our leadership. How do we advocate while a campus is indifferent in their response? And Abe, this is for you, but others, please feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is to make your feelings on that silence known to the university's administration. I think if someone is donating to a university and they're dissatisfied with silence and inaction on anti-Semitism, there's also a conversation to be had there. But I think really it's about making it known to whatever university it is, whether it's your alma mater, your child's university, that you're not going to stand for this and that this is unacceptable.
Kayla, our next question will be for you. Many also on Zoom and on email are asking, how would you advise a high schooler who are looking at colleges this fall? How can they evaluate a campus? And the same question would be for a first year student who's looking for community.
So of course, I can't speak to the American campuses, but I can just say that in my experience, I really could not thank organizations such as AJC and Hillel International and all student unions across the board for just being present, because I think, if I think back to South African experiences years and years ago, it was a very scary thing to go to university campuses with all the anti-Semitism. And nowadays, because these student leaders are in place, it is a lot easier. So in terms of, if you're feeling nervous about going to a campus, in terms of anti-Semitism, I would definitely look at that campus's Jewish student leaders first and see what they can help you with, because I can guarantee you that regardless of where they are in the world, they would be so happy to speak to you about their experience on their campuses and how they've decided to deal with different things.
To add on to that, if that's okay, I think the unfortunate reality is that, you know, facing these things is becoming unavoidable. And so the best things that we can do are to get ourselves informed and equipped with the language, and be prepared, you know, to face it, unfortunately. Additionally, I think like numbers don't always speak for themselves. Like Georgia Tech's Jewish population is tiny percentage wise, but we're an incredibly vibrant community. And so I think connecting with people on those campuses to actually hear how it is from students themselves, and, you know, organizations like Hillel and Chabad are more than happy to connect with prospective students, and share our experiences.
Thank you. Talia, we'll stay with you. Russell Schwartz is asking, you made a point that many students are neutral, but the loudest voices are on the extremes. How do those of us not on college campuses get an understanding of how wide or deep hostility may actually be?
It's difficult to gauge, honestly, and frankly painful as well, because I think it's important to remember that there are plenty of people who are on our side who are remaining silent, and it doesn't give them an excuse. I think that they need to be speaking out as well. Trying to think. I mean, at a certain point, we can't really bother with the people who are the most hostile, because they're just not going to be willing to change their minds, and we need to focus more of our energy and effort on the people who are in between, whose opinions we can maybe still sway. I hope that answers the question.
And Talia, I'll just add, we at Hillel are tracking incident by incident where issues are taking place. Since October 7th, we're at 65 total incidences right now, so that gives a sense of dimension, but those are direct acts of anti-Semitism like vandalization, direct harassment, assault. I think you're hearing great guidance from the students that to evaluate any given campus, you don't simply want to read the headline or social media. You want to actually talk to the Jewish student leaders on that campus, evaluate the strength of the Jewish community infrastructure there, Hillel, Chabad on campus, other organizations, and ask the hard questions if you visit of administrators to hear directly what they have to say in response.
Adam, our next question is actually for you. Can you speak, and it's from Bill Liss Levinson, can you speak to what efforts are being made to get universities and colleges to provide adequate security for Hillels and other on-campus Jewish organizations or sites or structures?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned before, this is a topic that is very heavy on my mind and my heart in this moment. There's nothing more important for us and really the Jewish community than that we can make sure to protect the baseline safety and security of Jewish students. Now, sadly, in the world we live in, we can't be prepared for every possible scenario, but what we are doing is, number one, just this week, providing security grants to every Hillel that is looking for additional physical security enhancements, or importantly, even for as soon as Shabbat tomorrow, having armed guards and the like. And it's sad to say that's some of what is required for those of us who recall being in Europe and just finding it unimaginable that to go to a simple service, you had to walk past multiple armed guards. That is, in cases, what we need on campus. Number two, we are directly lobbying university partners, and this is both the administration and the campus law enforcement teams, to do everything they can to enhance security. But I think it's important for people to understand most Jewish institutions on campus, Hillel included, are not formally under the university umbrella. We do have about 25% of our Hillels that are actually embedded within the university staff and infrastructure, but the remainder, and 100% of Chabads and Jewish fraternities and sororities, are independent organizations. So it's not as simple as the university saying maybe they want to provide security. In many cases, they're saying it's beyond their scope. Finally, I've been in direct contact with the highest levels of the Department of Homeland Security, with the White House, to get whatever support we can from federal agencies and messaging to send out bulletins to universities to push them to do whatever they can in this moment. So we're doing what we can. And really all of us at Hillel's, but also other Jewish institutions, just need to stay vigilant in the face of what are real threats.
Thank you. Our next question is coming from many people on Zoom who are hearing of Jewish students losing friends over this incident. Are you guys seeing that, and what's the impact? And Kayla, if we could start with you, but Abe, Talia, Jeremy, please jump in.
I think it is really difficult. I mean, it was just yesterday that a good friend of mine from our class, she posted something really horrific on social media. And I think it was quite hard for me to understand where she was coming from, because she was always that person in class who fought for all human rights and for every single person that needed it. And I was really so sad to see it. And I think we have a responsibility, and I genuinely do believe that, to educate people on the matters and to, speak. And I wouldn't advise anyone speaking to someone else if they didn't have adequate knowledge on the topic. But at the end of the day, for me personally, who I am as a person is a Jewish person before anything. And when you're attacking that, you're attacking me as a person. And I personally I can't be friends with someone like that. But I first would engage in conversation with that person and try to see if we can come to a middle understanding before anything.
Yeah, and just to jump in, yeah. So I feel like I'm more in the minority here. I haven't really lost many friends. I like to think that I've chosen really good friends. But I have friends who have lost friends, especially, social media engagement in person. It's really, really unfortunate. But I was talking with my mother this morning, and, we had the same conversation about, during the difficult times, you get to see who's real and who's not. But it is really unfortunate, but we have to be proud of who we are. We can't back down, and maybe it's kind of like just shaking off the bad part and the bad friends, and you can see who's good, and you can keep that, and it's a matter of loyalty at that point.
Yeah, I echo what Jeremy said, and I have seen a lot of people lose friends, and I think a lot of it ties back to social media. I can't tell you how many posts I've seen where it's like, and if you don't agree with this, unfollow me, and I'm like, no, that's not the answer. The answer is to have a conversation, because social media leaves no room for nuance, no room for understanding. And I think many people sometimes equate an Instagram follow to a friendship, but that's a topic for another time. But I think because these conversations are happening on social media in such a polarized manner, it's making it very easy for people to just say, oh, I'm not going to be your friend anymore. And that can't be the answer here.
Thank you. Talia, go ahead if you're going to.
I guess it's been covered, actually. It's okay.
Okay. Abe, you actually started to mention this, but Mark Alcott is wondering what's the right role for alumni of schools, and what do students want most from these alumni where they're feeling that the university leadership is disappointing?
I think there are a few roles for alumni, and I appreciate the question from Mark. I think, one thing that we've been talking about at our Hillel is how much it would mean to students to see alumni come visit, or to, send an email to a student, to show up for students and to show that Jewish alumni care and are thinking about us. That means a huge amount. And then other than that, I would say, what I said before, alumni have to make clear to the universities from which they graduated that they expect those universities to protect Jewish students, also to protect free speech, and that you're not going to stand idly by and just continue as normal if those universities do not take those actions.
And this will be our last question before I turn it back to you, Adam. And it's for all four of you, but Talia, will start with you. Knowing how dark and depressing things are feeling right now, is there anything that's giving you hope on your college campus?
Yeah, absolutely. There have been many glimpses of hope. We received a handwritten note and some baked goods from the Hindu student, one of the Hindu student groups. Just like a ray of sunshine and and then also just like seeing the way that the Jewish community has come together, really. We mean it when we say Am Yisrael Chai.
I can go next. I mean, just to echo what Talia has been saying, I've never seen the unity from the Ohio State Jewish community like I have in the past week and a half. It's been absolutely remarkable. I'm actually so inspired by, just the student leaders that we have, the Hillel staff that we have, and just the broader Columbus community. Like I said, we had a community vigil in which, over 600 people showed up, and we got very influential political and business leaders to show up. So, I think a lot of people are still in shock and have many questions. Why did this happen? How did this happen? Who's to blame? But you can't really answer that right now. You really have to just, be strong, be united, be courageous. I'll quote Churchill and said, it has been said that, courage is the first of all human qualities because it guarantees all others. So, be courageous, be united, be, strength in numbers, be proud. Don't back down.
I can go next. So the other day, our community got together and packed thousands upon thousands of packages to be sent to soldiers with so much stuff that I've never seen in my life before. It was absolutely incredible. But something that stood out to me on that day was the older women of our community came to that event and they bought all kinds of sweets and chocolates, and they were handing it out to every single volunteer. And I just thought to myself, this is what it means to be Jewish, us all just caring for each other. And I think, I heard it on the news, but regardless of where you stand politically, it's been such a mess over the past year. It really has. But I think the second this happened, it all flew away, because what matters is that we're Jewish, and in times of need, we come together. And that's what's most important.
Yes, and in closing on this question, I would say, in addition to what's been said, I've had some non-Jewish friends who have really shown up, as I'm sure everyone else on this call has as well. A few who have always asked how I'm doing, who have really been there for me. Also some faculty as well. And that, in addition to the unity of the Jewish community, I think is extremely inspiring, because it shows that we do have allies. There are people who have moral clarity. And we can get through this crisis together.
Yeah, I will share my closing thoughts. I mean, first of all, I want to share such a big toda rabah to each of our student leaders and panelists. I mean, what an incredible, incredible group. You all give me hope and inspiration in terms of the fact we will get through this period with strength. We have heard from all four of the students, and people have seen it through other avenues. These are dark days, and we have to be comfortable as a community naming the challenges, facing them down with clarity. But like in the Torah portion we just finished, Breshit, we have light that emerges as well. That light is represented by these student leaders and literally thousands of other students who are stepping up in this moment for one another. Jewish students, thankfully, as they pointed out, students from other communities. And so that will be critical in terms of where we go from here. For those of you listening as well, you have a role to play, as you have heard. Number one, invest in your student leaders, in Jewish institutions on campus, particularly for those of you who very understandably may feel like you don't want to invest in the university that you have been supporting as your alma mater. You can take those resources and invest it in Hillel, invest it in AJC, in Chabad on campus, or other organizations that are going to support all of the students in our community. As you also heard, connect, show up, you are welcome. And your presence means so much to not only the students. We have 1,200 professionals in the field who are working tirelessly on campuses with the students you see here, but so many others. And they are so appreciative of your presence and of support. And finally, have faith, have courage, but have belief. We will emerge stronger if we continue to pull together, and that will hopefully be on the doorstep of a safer and stronger Israel, a safer, stronger, and more connected Jewish community, and a better Middle Eastern world for Palestinians and everyone who have been so adversely impacted by the terrorism of Hamas. So have hope, have faith, and again, thank you so much for everything that's been shared by our wonderful student leaders.
Thank you all for sharing your insights with us, and thank you to our global audience for tuning in today. To stay up to date on the evolving situation, make sure to follow AJC and Hillel on social media. We also urge you to visit ajc.org/attackonisrael, where you can find informative resources, ways to take action, and information on how to donate to AJC's Israel Emergency Campaign. Please also visit hillel.org for the latest updates on how Hillel and Jewish students are standing in solidarity with Israel and the Israeli people. Our hearts are in Israel today and every day. Am Yisrael Chai. Thank you again, and goodbye.